Oh boy, we get consent. Y'all have to consent to being live streamed.
Everybody did. And it's live. It's live on Google, on
Oh
YouTube.
boy, we get consent. All right, are we good? Here we go, y'all. All right, SC Chat, first ever. We are live streaming. This is very exciting. So, for those of you that are watching at home, I feel like it's a broadcast, right? So, we're excited that you're joining us for our 10-year Twitter anniversary. And in the spirit of SC Chat that started 10 years ago, that was totally on a whim. Danielle Schultz and myself found each other on Twitter. We're going to give you a little 30-second history of SC Chat, and then we're going to introduce you to our guests that are on screen tonight. And we're so thankful to Susan Fuller and Adrian Robertson, who are helping with the actual Twitter chat that's happening at the same time. So I'll go ahead and get us started. And Danielle, please just jump on in. We've never done this before, so this is very exciting that we're able to do the live stream. So I would say I started on Twitter. I was actually had my account since 2009. But I really did not do much with it until about 2010. I just kind of started playing around, but there wasn't a lot of school counseling activity happening at all. And I think it was during the summer of spring, summer 2011. And I stumbled upon Danielle, and I was so excited to find another school counseling person. And we chatted back and forth for a couple of months, I think, just trying to kind of understand, get to know each other, but also kind of understand what our interests were around school counseling. And as I recall, Danielle, we just sort of decided on a whim that we would try to have a chat. We had seen other groups doing these chat things, and so we just decided we would try to do it. I think maybe we had like 2 people on the very first one. So I don't know what you remember, but that's sort of what I remember.
I remember being very overwhelmed by Twitter, and I feel like it still is very overwhelming unless you know about hashtags. And
Yeah.
I don't know how Connie and I found each other, but we were like, I was like, I think if we use the hashtag, we can only see each other's tweets. I was like, that would be amazing, because all this other stuff, I don't understand what's happening. So, I mean, I feel like being able to harness the power of hashtags and realizing that you could connect with each other using that, I think that really made me think, like, how could we use this in a way that more people could be a part of this, because it's so hard to find each other. But now, I mean, obviously it's very, very different.
Yeah, so it's really incredible just to think about what's happened with the school counselor community on Twitter. And of course, we know there are lots of other social media platforms that school counselors are using in addition to Twitter, but certainly we're focused on Twitter tonight. So, what I want to do is have you all meet our guests. And so, the people that we have invited here tonight, many of them are sort of the old timers, I guess, and I mean that with all the love in my heart. Right? These are some folks who were there with us in the very beginning, back when we started SC Chat 10 years ago, and then we also have some folks who maybe joined us a few years in. One of the things that Danielle and I did a year into SC Chat was we had the very first tweet up at the ASCA conference that was in Minneapolis. That was 2012. We have a picture of that group, and there's some folks in this in this call that are from that group. And then we also really wanted to invite our Canadian friends, Susan and Aaron, because they've been really instrumental in keeping SC Chat going and adding some real organization and structure to it in a time where Danielle and I both had a lot of life changes going on, and we kind of needed that extra support. So we're really grateful to them for keeping things going. So SC Chat is definitely an international community as well. So why don't we do the popcorn approach? So I'm going to start it off with, let's start off with Connie. And then if you'll just call on someone to go next, we'd love to know your name, where you are, and also your position. And then we'll get into some of the questions that we have for you tonight. So Connie, take it away.
Absolutely. So I'm Connie Johnson. I am an elementary school counselor in Southern Maryland. So hey to Maryland out there. I see you, Jeremy. I have been a school counselor for 10 years. I remember I started at SC Chat when I was finishing up my master's program. So it's been 10 years of that, and most of that in elementary, and just love what I do. I'm gonna go down and over. I'm gonna go to my Maryland person, Jeremy.
Oh, that's where I am. I'm like that for you. Okay. You're all the way down that way. All right. So just introducing ourselves, or we're doing this first question that we have. All right. So I am a high school counselor in Baltimore County, Maryland. For those who don't know, Baltimore County surrounds Baltimore City, so it's a different jurisdiction, but my school pretty much borders that, is right along that Baltimore City. So everything that we go through, the city experiences as well. So we've got a little bit of everything, and my community is as diverse as they come, with all the poverty and homelessness that comes with a big city like Baltimore, and folks like Under Armour's founder Kevin Plank living in our zone as well. So a little bit of everybody.
Jeremy, you want to call on somebody?
All right, call on. All right, well, let me shoot it over to Susan. Go ahead, Susan, take it away.
Hi, I'm Susan Spellman-Can, and I'm in beautiful Cape Breton, Nova Scotia right now. But most of the time when I'm in SCHAT, I'm in Calgary. I right now am retired, but I've been saying that for the last 3 years. I officially retired 3 years ago, and every year I've taken a contract. I keep going back to school counseling because I love it. And I got to do, which was fabulous last year, to be a high school counselor in the first online high school in Calgary. So that was exciting for me because it's been a passion for a very long time. So next year I say I'm retired again, but one never knows. But I'm happy to still be involved with SCHAT and with all of you for sure. That's fantastic. And I'll call on Danielle.
Hi, I'm Danielle. I'm a school counselor in Pittsburgh, PA, middle school counselor. And I'm trying to think of what else we even said. My position, middle school counselor. Not really sure what else. I can't remember. I'll call on Jeff.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jeff Rame. I work at Nortel High School in Northern California. I live in Nevada. It's kind of complicated, but it's the way it works where I'm at. And so I drive around the most beautiful lake commute every morning to work. But I was actually curious what my first tweet actually was. And so I looked back and it was on May 23rd, 2012 at 5:51 p.m. if you were curious. But I announced myself changing, announcing my blog, So the Counseling Beat. So that was my first thing. And I did start my blog and get on Twitter to get my job that I now have. So it was successful. And I will popcorn Francine.
Hi. It's so good to see you all. I am Francine Sabins, and I am a school counselor, a high school counselor in rural Southern Illinois. So that's super far from Chicago. So if you're watching and wondering geographically where I am, I'm as far from Chicago and Illinois as you can probably get. So it's very different in Southern Illinois, and our problems are very different in Southern Illinois. I'm super rural, and I hate to say it out loud because I feel like I'm gonna like get beat up if I go outside, but I have like maybe 106 kids on my caseload. So I'm blessed in every way. Matthew's shaking his head like I am gonna beat you up outside. I'm blessed. I'm in a great place, and I actually started on Twitter because of Aaron in 2012. I don't know what my first tweet was, and I was wondering when Jeff was saying that, like, how do we figure that out? I want to know how we figure that out, because I think that'd be cool. I am gonna popcorn it to Matthew.
Evening. I'm Matthew McLean. I am in rural Colorado, not in the mountains. It looks more like Kansas and Nebraska where I live. Rural, very diverse. I'm also the executive director of the Colorado School Counselor Association. I feel like I joined Twitter probably because of Aaron, because we were in Savannah together 10 years ago. And we were there for Ask LDI. And I joined at a rooftop bar. I don't remember what my first tweet was, but I remember it was, and actually it was towards the end of July of 2011. So I do know that. I am going to be an elementary counselor starting next week. I've been a counselor, this is year 17. I did 10 at an intermediate school, grades 5 and 6, and then did 6 years at high school, and now I'm going to elementary. So I will go to Erin.
Hi, Matthew. You're my Facebook friend and my Twitter friend. My name's Erin Luong, and I'm the consultant for school counseling for the Calgary Catholic School District. And I am also the president of the Alberta Teachers Association Council of School Counselors. It's my 19th year being a school counselor, and I joined SC Chat with Susan Spellman-Can because she had gone to ASCA and said, I met this amazing community and you could connect with them too. And so the next year I went to ASCA, met a bunch of people at ASCA, but I pre-met all my ASCA peeps through SC Chat. And Angela, it's your turn.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Angela. I am a middle school counselor in Southern Maine, and I work in kind of a city for Maine. I know it's different than Chicago or anything like that, but a lot of poverty and homelessness and all those things. I love being in the middle school. I've been there for 15 years, going into 16. I can't see myself anywhere else. And my first Twitter experience was from my students. They were doing this hashtag thing, and I had no idea what that was. So I went to a MESCA, the Council State Board meeting, and somebody else was talking about Twitter. And I was like, can you help me understand what this is? My students are talking about hashtag. I don't know what it is. So she signed me up, and I had no idea how to use it. And I didn't know what a hashtag was. Somehow I got connected to Danielle and followed her blog like religiously. And that just led me to Twitter and SChat, and the rest is history. It's been since 2014 I've been on there, and I love it. So thanks for having me here today.
I keep thinking about Aaron and I presenting in Disney whenever there was in Florida, and we shared the Jimmy Fallon and Justin Timberlake hashtag sketch, which I'm planning to share on YouTube if someone doesn't do it later.
Yeah, we may have to do that just for fun.
Yeah.
Throwback fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, y'all. I completely forgot to introduce myself, Erin Mason. I'm now in Atlanta, but when I started on Twitter, I was in Chicago, Illinois, and was a professor at DePaul University, but now I'm professor at Georgia State University, former middle school counselor. And it's so amazing to have the geographic representation, level representation that we have. And I think, as the SC Chat community grows, that's what's really great, is that everybody can find connection to someone. I often think about our rural school counselors, especially, and how Twitter's a really good resource if you just feel isolated or you're the only one in your building or in your district, those kinds of things. I think that's a really important use of Twitter for those folks in particular. So I think we want to get into the questions, and we do plan to stay on tonight for 90 minutes. So we're now about 15 minutes into that time. And if you can stay with us, but we certainly understand that you may have family things to attend to. So stay with us for as long as you can. But if you need to go, we certainly will understand that as well. So our first question, and you can answer some of these, or you don't have to answer all of them. But we would love to know, that first question is, when and why did you decide to start using Twitter in a professional capacity? So we do know that some of people that get on Twitter initially, they get on maybe for personal reasons. They're following sports teams or, celebrities or whatever, but maybe you decided to get on strictly for professional reasons, or maybe you decided to switch gears from personal to professional. So would love to hear from some of you all about why you decided maybe you're going to use Twitter for school counseling reasons.
So I alluded to this. So I was just starting in the state leadership for our state school counselor association, and I wanted to network with others that were in that similar boat. So that's how Aaron and I met. And so it was really amazing, because not only, so even though you're like part of this group of people and everything like that, you still feel very alone, because who else in my state is in my position? No one. And so being able to relate and connect with others that had a very similar situation was what really was important to me. And so when I joined in Savannah, I didn't know what I was getting into. I wasn't really sure what was going on. And so I was happy to join, because then that way I had other people that I could connect with, not only for initially that state leadership position, but then also being able to connect with others and being able to connect with everyone in this live stream. So that was how I started.
When I started with Twitter, I wasn't in any of the leadership positions I'm in now. So I was a high school counselor, and I was in a school doing my own thing. But then I took a contract in Japan, and I was feeling super isolated being on the other side of the world with nobody who had a position like mine. And so I was using Twitter a lot to reconnect back with colleagues in Canada and the US in order to kind of keep myself current. And then once I did move into my various leadership positions, I've used Twitter a lot. Alberta, like one province of Alberta is about as big as about 10 or 12 states. So to be sort of trying to connect counselors all at once, Twitter is one of our key things that we use.
I remember I joined Twitter pretty much with the intent of it being a professional venture. I that particular late summer into fall that I took my current position as a department chair at a different high school that I'd been at for the previous 9 years. I knew I needed to make sure that I used a different platform that wasn't as equal. I wanted to make sure that there was the you follow me, but we're not friends. That I have some family members that have some pretty poor boundaries, and they made that lack of awareness of boundaries very clear in that particular summer as well. So it was best that I just made a clean cut from Facebook and realized I was missing out on some things. So I'd heard about Twitter and figured, well, that's a good chance for me to like have my message and get my message across to the community without having the unnecessary boundary crossings that happen far too often with Facebook.
Yeah, I too had no intention of using it personally when I joined. I wanted to use it as a professional, and I think I still mostly rather do that. I think I do tweet support, like I complain to United Airlines or something like that on Twitter because I think it gets attention. But apart from that, I don't post food pictures and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's been a great opportunity, and I think like most of you guys have said too, I think it's been a great way to also connect with people that you can actually see in real life at conferences, and that's something I've missed in the last couple of years. I haven't been to ASCA in 2 or 3 years, but I'm looking forward to being in Austin. So yeah, I'm hoping to see everybody here and everybody else that's online that I haven't yet met.
Kind of jumping off what Jeff said about connecting at conferences. I don't even know how we decided to do the original, like the tweet up in person, but I feel like being able to have those prior connections like really helped me. And I'm sure helped other people kind of connect with others at the conference because, I mean, I don't know, I'm an introvert. I may not present as one, but I'm very much an introvert. And I probably wouldn't have like walked up to any of you and just talked to you at a conference, but having that prior relationship online that was built like professionally, I feel like really helped me kind of step out of my comfort zone. And I feel like help others kind of connect with each other and get some professional support that they might not otherwise receive through Twitter.
I agree, Danielle. I have always been a rural school counselor. This is my 14th year as a rural school counselor. And I can still remember when Erin and I were at the Illinois School Counselor Association, and she's like, Francie, I'm asking her all these questions because I have her like captive in that moment in person. She's like, you have to get on Twitter. If you want help and you want a community, you have to get on Twitter. It will help you. I promise. It's not a scary place. It's okay. And my little introvert soul was like, I don't think I can do this, but I'll do it because Erin told me to. So I did it. And I remember the first SC chat, like right after that, I'm like, I don't even know what to do. I'm not sure. And Erin's like, you just jump in there, just join, just do it. And after that, like going to conference was so easy for me, but I had so much anxiety around going the first couple of years of my profession because I didn't know anybody and I was by myself. I was the only school counselor in my school. I didn't know anyone else in my area that was going, but then having this whole community of people through SC Chat, I was like, I'm going to see faces there that I recognize and I feel safe going, knowing I'll run into people that I know, that I've seen and I've talked to online. So I feel like it's okay. I can go and I'll be okay. And I don't think I've missed maybe one conference in the last, 12 years, maybe. That's it. And it's because of this community that helped me to be able to do that. And Erin.
Well, I started Twitter 8 years ago, and it was because of Dr. Alec Kurros, who was an ed tech prof, who we Erin and I did an educational technology online, open online course, a MOOC with him. And since he's become a really, really good friend, the same way that you guys have. And I remember thinking at the time, oh, you can't meet really good friends on Twitter. That just can't happen. I just couldn't even imagine that could happen. But it has happened. And I certainly started using professionally. I remember there was an S chat, Danielle, and I think you were running it at the time. And I thought, I am so scared. Like I'm not, I can't jump in. I don't know what to do. And I was really scared, but I just thought, oh, too bad. I'm just jumping through all these rules, question 1, question 2, whatever. And I thought it didn't matter. I couldn't figure out all that. And I just thought, well, I'm going to just jump in. And that's exactly what I did. I just started answering questions and then making the connections and using it totally professionally at the beginning. And I think because of my continue online communities in many other areas, not just Ask Chat, I have made those connections personally as well. And I love that I can still use Twitter for that, not just as a school counselor, but connecting with school counselors all over the world, and getting resources and using it in that way was incredible to me. And just knowing that I was so scared in the beginning, and if we just stop that and just jump in and connect, you can meet the most fabulous people in the world, like I did, and I'm so grateful for that.
I felt the same way as you, Susan. So nervous about the hashtags and how they work. And I remember forgetting the A1 when answering and things like that. I agree. Just jumping in is what's important. I started in August at a MESCA counseling board retreat, and people were talking about Twitter. So they signed me up, and then I had to do it on my own and didn't really know what I was doing. And then fast forward to the first couple days of school, and we had a new superintendent who was encouraging staff to get on Twitter and social media as a professional, not personally, but as a professional, and put out there what the great things we were doing in our district, because our district had kind of a negative connotation and negative stereotype out there that, you know, we were this poor town and we couldn't make the grade and things like that. So our superintendent kind of charged us with putting out positive messages about what we were doing, because of course we were doing great things. So I loved that. I have a journalism background and public relations. So I kind of used it as my first go-to was to connect through ASCA and, you know, other state counselors. And then my second go-to was to be professionally, like, publishing all the great things that we do as school counselors and with our students. My very first public tweet, the first week of school, I'd only been on Twitter like 3 weeks. My superintendent saw the post. I don't even know what it was. We were doing some welcome thing for students at open house. And he emailed me within 10 minutes and asked if I would present at the school board meeting tomorrow night. And I was like, what? But that was exactly why I joined Twitter. So I tell a lot of school counselors, especially my interns, I tell them get on there for 2 reasons. One, connect globally, connect with state leaders, connect with ASCA. Like, that's how I get my updates from ASCA. And then number 2, you have to promote what you're doing. Otherwise, people make up stories about what you are as a counselor. They don't know exactly what you're doing. So put it out there that you did a lunch group today, or show those fidget toys in your room, or show that great diversity book you found. You know, that's my reason for being on Twitter.
So I have something in common with Angela. So my background was communications and public relations before I became a school counselor. And I joined Twitter back in 2008. I was working at a communications firm. And so we were trying to connect with reporters and engage different education organizations. And we heard about this thing, Twitter. And so that's where I learned about the hashtags and how to connect with people there. And I remember presenting to, when we were doing our consulting work, presenting to government officials about, you know, how you can use hashtags to find information and how you can, you know, write and draft a tweet so that it's short enough and engaging enough, and use the right hashtags. And so when I transitioned into school counseling, I kept thinking about how that could be a community for counselors as well. And I'm just grateful for the people who I've met through using Twitter. Even though I may not use it as much as I did in the past, it's been such a benefit, especially in my early years as a school counselor. I know there were a lot of risks that I took because I saw people trying things and sharing those things and promoting their programs on Twitter. And it made me think, well, if they can do it, I can do it too. And I want to give it a shot. And so I think that's probably one of the bigger things that I got out of transitioning from doing it for my professional role as a communications person, but as a school counselor.
One of the things, Connie, that you just said reminded me of how powerful the reach is of Twitter. So I guess this is like 7 years ago or now. a group that I ran at my school, we did a We Don't Say campaign, which was the kids thought of their own phrases of things they didn't want to use within the school community. We used the Carol apparel, like our school clothes, to be the models for we did our whole poster campaign. Duke University saw my tweet and put it up on their university website that our kids were doing their campaign. And my kids were like, Duke knows me, Duke knows me. And it was just like an impulse to be like, hey, you guys have done good work. This is the kind of stuff we're doing at our school here. So it was the networking that I never could have done in like face to face that the power of the Twitterverse did for us.
Awesome. I mean, it just shows the connection and the professional opportunities, and how just one simple tweet can lead to board presentations and all kinds of friendships and different things. So our next question is, how is SC Chat valuable to you as a school counselor?
I'm going to jump in on this one, and I know I'm not a school counselor right now, but I think kind of in combination with the first question, one of the reasons why I got on Twitter is still an answer to this question, which is that it really helps me stay current. And that was one of my big fears about becoming a counselor educator, and still is something that I stay concerned about, is because I'm not, in the field on a day-to-day basis, I don't want to lose touch with the issues that school counselors are facing. And so Twitter really has been a great tool for just keeping the pulse of what's happening in the field and keeping connected to people who, if I need to have a side conversation with them and better understand an issue, I know I can reach out to them. And I think for me, one of the things that I really like about Twitter too is that it helps give me a really broad perspective, because you can be connected to people, not only in your state, but nationally and internationally too. And so you start to see how the issues are different in different places, and what school counselors are dealing with and what students are dealing with. And so for me, that's really what's most valuable to me, is the connections, number one, but also just the ability to feel like at any given point, I can go and kind of get some really tangible information about what's happening and what's current.
I can mirror that, I think, in a lot of ways, Erin. As a rural school counselor, I think a lot of times we feel like we're all alone, and there's nobody next door that we can talk to that might understand what we're going through. But when you have a space like Twitter where you can go to in this SC Chat community, if you have a question that comes up, you can ask it there. And I find in a lot of times within 20-30 minutes, you have lots of resources that you can tap into to try and help your student, or help your school figure out a problem that might be coming up, whereas before it might have taken days to try to figure out how to navigate a situation. Especially if you're a newer school counselor, it's nice to know you're not alone and you don't have to have all the answers, but you have this whole community of people behind you that can help you through some of the situations that come up day to day. And that was really helpful for me when I first jumped on, just to know I could go and have this huge community of people that could help me tackle some of those situations that came up that I just wasn't sure. That it was nice to have a different perspective, and not just a different perspective in my state, but all over the country, the way different people have handled specific situations. And then as I've grown into it over 10 years, it's become a place to connect, to, further my education and to present. I've presented with several of you here and written articles with people here that, I probably wouldn't have done if I never would have jumped on Twitter and taken that chance and, climbed out of my bubble. Like Danielle said, I'm very much an introvert, and I wouldn't have done any of those things. I would have stayed in my little bubble and, maybe even fizzled out at some points. Aaron knows there've been some hard times in the last 10 years where I've called on a lot of you to help me through those, and I wouldn't have gotten through them if it wasn't for this community. So it's valuable in so many ways, personal and professional.
And I'll echo exactly what both of you have already said in the sense that as a Lone Ranger school counselor in the rural areas, it's been a key thing for me as well. And I think we'd probably see that come up quite a bit because I don't have anybody to ask questions to, even within my own district frequently. And so it's very, very frequent that I would turn to Twitter to find out. And then I did start even before I started working as a school counselor. And so it was something that really gave me a foundation of support throughout my first years and first time doing things for the first suicide evaluation, first different things going on that I don't know what to do yet, and we never actually done it maybe in person. And so it's been that, but it's also been, like Francine said, it's been a kind of a gateway drug to other greater things that we all get to do. And so it's speaking, it's presenting, it's forcing us to get out of our comfort zone. It's forcing us to, I kind of have a competitive spirit inside of me. And so I see what other people do online and I'm like, I want to do that too. How can I do that? And how can I make it better? Like it kind of spurs me on a little bit. It's kind of that iron sharpens iron element. And that's been one thing that's been super huge for me as a professional, as I've gone through my last almost 10 years now.
Well, building up that resource cabinet because of all of you has been incredible. And all of you out there who contribute to SChat. If I want something on a topic or did over the years want something on a topic, you either had it or gave it or shared it or helped me collaborate so that I could modify it or whatever. And that's been phenomenal. Sometimes it's interesting. I remember one time on Twitter, I had put out something about hope. I wanted something on or that hope was one of my favorite words. And this educator in Ontario came on and before you know it, he was, I could ask in my own school for a resource and not get it till 5 days later. And it was 30 seconds later, he said, I'll make one for you and send it. And sent me an international poster with hope and all the words in every language. It's incredible sometimes the things that can happen on Twitter that you would think, okay, that people aren't going to, but they do. Kindness is still there. It's harder, I think, to bring it in, and the helpfulness of people to connect it less than it was 8 years ago when I started. I felt it was more of a close-knit community, and it seems bigger and broader, and you don't get your answer to your questions like you used to, but it's still there. And the power of Twitter is still positive if you focus in, instead of taking in all the extraneous information that's not real helpful.
I think SChat has given me role models from like Mindy Willard and Kat Pastor, like really showing what comprehensive school counseling should be and can be, and being challenged to follow the Ask a National model has been really, really helpful to me. There's still in my state, there's still this competing idea of like a guidance counselor or a counselor in the school, but that we still haven't really embraced as a state, and we're trying as a school district, but we need more of us to really push that. And so I get that that challenge from my peers on SC Chat to run a comprehensive school counseling program. And I don't get that challenge from really anywhere else. And I really appreciate that from you guys that are on the video with me, as well as those that are on Twitter right now.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Jeremy. I think SC Chat really, especially as I began, really shaped my school counseling identity. I know when I was in grad school, there was so much discussion about the transformation of school counseling and how we're school counselors and we're not guidance counselors. And this is what we should be doing in schools. And we should have data-driven, equitable, comprehensive programs. And then when I got into my school system, not everyone was on that same page with me. And it was kind of isolating, especially going from, I was in a cohort program. And so we were all together and we were all just pushing towards the same goal. And we all separated. I felt very lonely in my new role. And so it was difficult, especially as a newer counselor, to kind of forge ahead with this identity that I really believed in, and knowing that not everyone who was doing the same job as me did. And so I knew I might feel like I was doing the most or being extra, but I knew that's what I believed in. It was what was right for kids. And so being able to say, well, at least at SC Chat on Tuesday after nights at 8 o'clock, everyone there knows what I'm talking about. And I'm going to get that same encouragement and reinforcement when I'm there. And so it really helped me. And I know, going ahead to some questions, but I reached out to people because I needed help. I was so discouraged about how I could make this work, these dreams I had as a grad student into a counselor, but SC Chat showed me it was possible. So like Jeremy said, I had role models, and it made that school counseling world smaller for me. So I was connecting with people who I would have never, ever met in other states and other areas. And then from just SC Chat, there were things that branched out of it that were even more helpful. So then there was elementary ESC Chat, and then professional school counsel of color. And then I could find more and more like-minded people who were there to encourage me when I go back. It was like my place to fill up. And then I could go back to my school and say, all right, no, I'm going to be bold and brave and do what I know is right for kids. And even if you don't agree with me, I know that if SC Chat could see me, they would cheer me on. So that would be great. So that's really, I felt like it shaped my identity big time, and it helps me to sustain that. And then encourage others to stick with it too, when, you're feeling that push to maybe not work the way you were trained. So.
I just love your example of like the place you go to fill up, because I totally feel that for SC Chat. One thing I wanted to say about like when you're in grad school, like you learn all these wonderful, magical things that you think that you're going to do whenever you start a position, and then it doesn't always happen. And I think that definitely, like other people said this, even like it makes you feel less alone. It makes you feel like there's other people that are going through the same thing. There's other people that you can connect with whenever you have an issue. I mean, even if you may be a rural school counselor, but you may be a school counselor who has many other counselors in their district that you don't like see eye to eye with, or feel supported by, or like, that you have wonderful things that you want to contribute, but they aren't always seen in the way that that you want them to be, or like other people who don't see your vision or see the SC Chat vision. So I do think that, like, I just love it fills you up.
Yeah, I've often wondered, as compared to clinical mental health counselors, school counselors do not get ongoing supervision. And that's always been something that's been a downfall I think, of our profession, or at least something that's really been missing. So I've often wondered if spaces like SC Chat, where you know that you're going to get something, getting that filling up sense, once a month. Yes, it's virtual. Yes, it moves fast. It doesn't really look like supervision, but maybe it kind of fills you up in the same way that supervision sort of what's kind of like, I don't know, supervision express or something.
Well, it's also there when you need it. So like, even if you,
right,
you don't have to be there for the monthly chat. Like if you get on and you're like, I need an idea for this specific group and I'm out of them. Like, what do you have? Like, people are, I mean, even if they're not as willing as they were in the past to offer ideas, I feel like you can still get connected to like people that you can either model some of the things that they did, or you get examples. I mean, I think of like, there's specific accounts. I mean, I tweeted for my school like a long time ago, but I stopped, and then I'm like getting back into it again, like last year and the year before. And I mean, there's certain people that I follow who I'm like, oh, they're doing such amazing things, like marketing and promoting their program. Like, I want to be like them. So it's just like you're constantly getting re-energized and getting more ideas.
For me, what's been really great is in the past year or more, looking at doing more equity and diversity work. I live in Maine. We don't have a lot of diversity. And I think, you know, every time I go to a training or read, one suggestion is to diversify your community within, you know, even just your friend group or people that you spend time with, or your colleagues. Like, try to hang out with people who are different than you and learn from them. And that's hard in a state like Maine. And so for me, I go to Twitter, I go to Instagram, I go to these social media. It's not the same as being in person. I would much rather have it be in person, but I've made the most incredible connections through people, and every day, like taking that bite-sized piece of knowledge and information, you know, specifically talking about diversity and equity, and I can digest it because it's just this little piece, and I'm hearing it from a real school counselor in the country or in the world, and you know, who gets on my level and can make it translated into something that I can do in my job. That has been life-changing, honestly, for me in the work that I'm doing, because it's made it more tangible. You know, a lot of you have talked about being in rural areas, and I kind of think the whole state of Maine is that way. So when I can connect to people who are different and can kind of share those ideas, and I can bring that back to my district, it's really powerful.
I also really love when we do sometimes on SC Chat, like recommended reading lists, because when we do PD as a district, it's for teachers. It's not necessarily for school counselors. So when we get, oh, these are good books, like equity books, or these are good books about all different stuff. Like in Canada, it's a little bit different from the States. So some of the stuff that are really big topics for Americans, I'm like, oh, okay, I'll learn about it, but then I can figure out how to apply it to a Canadian perspective as well. So I really, really like those reading lists.
Well, I think being on, like you said, maybe you're not supervised, but you're held somewhat accountable to be professional when you're on Twitter and when you're on SChat. So sometimes we don't agree with what someone has said, and I've seen it called out, and I think that's a good thing. You know, maybe it wasn't that professional. You know, there are people who will say and do some things that are not necessarily in a professional manner. And really, we have, I think, helped each other by challenging someone as to what they're thinking or saying about a specific topic, even though they're in the profession. And I think we do it in a great way, because I really believe people still stay connected. It is such a learning opportunity to up your game, to keep professional, to learn from different people who are doing different things. And we've had people coming from different countries, you know, jump into SChat, which is always a great opportunity to find out more and to learn something new about how are they handling school counseling in their country, which I think is really a wonderful opportunity.
I remember one time we had a Israeli counselor come in, and she was talking about safety and stuff like that. And the night she was talking about it, she was talking about bombing stuff that was happening every day with her kids, and how was she going to connect with them and it really put it in perspective for me, because I've heard all those stories, but I hadn't lived that story. And so it was pretty cool to get that experience.
So I think our next question, we're kind of getting into our next question, which is, are there any specific examples of connections or opportunities that you specifically credit to SC Chat?
I can jump on that one, I think for sure. I definitely would have never thought that I would be a blogger or sharing anything that I do, because I was all by myself and just kind of like figuring it out as I went along. But then I found Danielle's blog because I was on Twitter, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And I copied everything Danielle ever put out. I thought she was a superstar. And when I met her at Ask a Conference, I probably was like a super fan. But after that, I'm like, I do some cool stuff too. I'm going to blog about it and it'll help people. I think you actually told me that, like, you need to blog about this stuff, share it with people. And I never would have done that had I not started Twitter and then led into this SC Chat community, and then met people at conference that were like, you need to share this with other people. Don't just share it with people who ask you, to share it with everyone. And then from that, you know, Aaron and I realized we had very similar interests about things, because you had moved away at that time, I think. And, you know, we wrote an article together that turned into a webinar for ASCA. And then Jeff and I presented together. We met on Twitter. Jeremy and I meet up literally every ASCA. We never would have done that before, you know, and we've done so much committee work and things like that, that never would have happened if it wasn't for SC Chat. And Matt and I, we, you know, close out every ASCA conference together with our suitcases now. So, you know, there's just so many things, articles and presentations and different things that we've done throughout the country, like together, some of us, and individually, some of us, to share what we've learned from each other and things that we maybe wouldn't have shared before, because we didn't have the confidence to do it. And we didn't think it was maybe anything worth sharing. It was just what we were doing. We were doing our job, you know? So I think there's just so many things.
Jeremy and I have slept in the same room. We shared rooms when we first started going to ASCA. So we, you know, he snores, I don't, it's okay. But we've also presented, I've probably ate dinner with half of you. It's created such a number of great opportunities to grow. It also, I think the one I would probably call out that maybe had the most wide reaching impact would be starting the scholarship that I run with Carol Miller. And that's been one that's allowed, I don't even know, 50 something counselors to go to ASCA since 2012. So it's run through donations from people like us, and then that's mainly our Twitter community. So, I mean, it's been a big, not only financial support of school counselors, but the community supporting the community.
So
go ahead, Matt.
Thank you. So with Aaron, when we started following different people, and like I followed Danielle, and then I think that I went to a presentation that you did at ASCA, Danielle, on minute meetings.
Oh, yeah.
And so as a result, then I started doing that at my school. And I'm like, at the time there was 500 kids, and I'm like, I'm gonna do these minute meetings with 500 kids. And did I think I was going to be able to do it? I wasn't sure, but I kept telling people, because if I tell enough people, then they're going to ask me about it. And there was some accountability there, like Susan had mentioned before. And anyway, it was a great experience. And so learning from people around you, you know, just seeing the great things that Francine was doing, and then she coming out and presenting to our state conference, and then the same thing with Erin. She came out and did keynote for our conference. And so, I mean, those connections of not only meeting people that are amazing counselors and doing great things, but just amazing people that end up becoming your friends. And so I think that's the piece that is just unbelievable. And I'm a big crybaby, so I'll try to say this without getting emotional. And so then I get this message from Susan, because if you do follow me on Twitter, you know I have Bowtie Tuesday. And her late father-in-law had some vintage bow ties, and she sent them to me. And so I have them upstairs. And so super sweet. I'm done.
Yeah, I'll chime in with Jeff. Being part of this community has saved me thousands of dollars because of being able to share rooms with Jeff and Matthew and Sean. I definitely appreciate the friendships and the love and being able to text people and just check in and ask questions. I agree, although it isn't really a Twitter thing, it's more of a blog thing. But yeah, I was thinking about the Minute Meetings blog post as well. So I really appreciate that. But I can't not mention my FLOTUS moment, because that would not have been possible without Twitter. Like without Twitter and the ST chat, like, you know, it was one thing to be the like Maryland High School Council of the Year and be mentioned in that, but there wouldn't have been that reaction of like people being familiar with my name without having this community. And that became so much bigger than what it would have been or could have been, because of you all. And it's still get chills.
That was like one of those moments like, Jeremy, I know him. Like this man, I know him.
You have to say more about what that is for people that are watching. You have to explain that.
I know him.
That was huge, Jeremy.
Okay, so you'll have to explain. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yes, you have to explain it.
I missed that hashtag.
I have it on video.
Yeah,
That was
so,
real life.
So it was a really big deal that you know, after all the many years of celebrating the School Counselor of the Year program in Washington, they finally got some attention from the First Lady's office, from Michelle Obama's office. And so down in Orlando, they managed to get that connection that she was going to come in and give a speech at the conference in Orlando. And so, as is the case in those political speeches, they want to highlight some examples of whatever it is that they're doing. So that particular year, I had been a semifinalist from my state in the School Council of the Year program, and so they highlighted me. And I've got another side story, but that's not relevant in this particular context. And so Jeff and I had already presented, and we were already active with the ST chat. And so here she was giving this speech and gonna, mentioning some examples of what school counselors do. And so, she said, for example, Jeremy Goldman, and she would have like moved on in her sentence, but didn't get the chance to because the crowd like went crazy because I wasn't just like a random person. I had these connections and people knew my name. And that just like took her off her autopilot and like engaged with the crowd, and that made it a lot more lively, and it was really exciting. You'll have to see it on Twitter and on YouTube.
Yeah, Jeff found it. He tweeted it, so it's in the thread. Yeah, that was very moment.
I have that in a 1.5 foot size frame in my office, just pointing at me. Oh, thank you, Chris. Chris just because he's the one that took that grabbed that video or took that picture.
Yeah, I will also say too, I've had I think I can credit at least one graduate of mine, Molly Creek, who ended up connecting with Matthew out in Colorado, and now is working out in Colorado, and is a member of CSCA. And
Pretty sure she was a School Counselor Community Scholarship recipient as well.
Yay! Fantastic! Even better. So I do think that there have been some of my students who've been able to, make job connections from being on Twitter, which is phenomenal.
In 2016, I was planning the Alberta conference for school counselors, and I was like, oh, I need a keynote. Who should I get for my keynote? And Susan Spellman-Can said, I think you should tweet Erin Mason and see if she wants to come to Canada and be your keynote. I was like, what? why would Erin Mason want to come all the way to Canada just for me? She's like, try it. And guess what? Erin Mason was my keynote.
It was a great time, and it was so funny because that was a time where I went from doing a job interview for my current job straight to Canada, and then did your keynote for you. But I had just a wonderful time. I was very honored to have that experience, and same in for CSEA, and yeah, I did end up doing a number of keynotes as a result, I think, of Twitter. I'm not really doing a lot of that anymore, but that's definitely part of it. But yeah, I mean, articles, presentations, jobs, I mean, lots of different things. Danielle and I talked about the fact that a number of people in this sort of original group have gone on to doctoral programs, or have gone on to win state awards, or have gone into leadership positions, like Jeremy's on the Ask board, or have run for leadership positions. I mean, this is an esteemed group of people for sure.
I'll say that one of the ways that this community was valuable for me is that it made this really esteemed group of people very accessible. So I know that sometimes when you hear about the great things that people are doing, it can be somewhat intimidating. You think that they're off far away doing those wonderful things, but because we had this hashtag and we could connect with each other so easily, you could quickly just reach out to them, and people were ready and willing to have conversations with you quickly. And there are two people I know that I've had conversations who I've reached out and say, hey, will you chat with me on Google Chats or Google Meets or whatever it was, Google Hangout, I don't know. Back then, and it was helpful. I remember my second year as a school counselor reaching out to Danielle, and I'd read her blog like everyone mentioned here, and just needed some help about taking all of the aspirations you have as a new school counselor and trying to make it reasonable and meaningful. And I remember one of the words of advice that I always credit her with and then give to other people is that maybe pick one or two things that you want to focus on for that year. You don't have to do everything. Pick those one or two things and do those things well. And that's something that has stuck with me. And it's advice that I got from being able to connect with someone through Twitter that I wouldn't have met when I was in Virginia and she was in Pennsylvania. And then kind of on the flip side of it, I've been really fascinated with so many counselor educators. I feel like they're all rock stars. And I just love, reading all of the changes that are happening in the field and all of the research. And so having counselor educators be active and engaged on Twitter really challenges me and challenges my thinking and how I can take maybe things that are in research. I have a friend now who's a counselor educator, and we talk about all this all the time. How can we make those connections between the research and what we're doing practically to make sure, we're staying abreast of what is most important for our students? And so that's been a really neat thing to see in the past few years too.
I mean, like everyone else, like I definitely was able to present at conferences. The first ASCA conference I attended was in Seattle, and I attended because I was presenting, which I hadn't planned on doing, and I hadn't planned on going. I was just this little school counselor out in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, just doing my thing. But nope, it really seriously changed my life. And like I started a blog because my dad encouraged me to do it. And he's like, you just have to find a way to share your ideas because you have ideas and it's going to help other people. And I was like, I don't even know what a blog is. I don't understand. But I feel like that's a lot of what this group does. Like if you don't know something, you figure it out. And so figuring out blogging made me want to figure out Twitter, made me want to figure out these other things. So it's just like a community that's constantly learning and engaging and trying new things. And like it makes you realize you're not the only one like that. And that, I feel like that makes it even more awesome because you find other people that you can connect with in that way.
I think, Danielle, are we ready for our next question? All right. So let's go on to our next question. So one of the things we also wanted to know from you, if you use other social media platforms, which there are more than I can even name at this point, what is it about Twitter that you think is unique? What makes it special? And I know Jeremy kind of mentioned some things earlier about just kind of getting off Facebook because boundaries and that sort of thing. But what is it for you about Twitter that is unique and different and helpful to you in your career?
I'll share something that I've always thought about Twitter compared to other social media platforms. I feel like Twitter puts you on an equal footing with everybody else. Like the information that you share, I mean, there may be different things now with like algorithms and everything, but like you are kind of like on an equal playing field. Whereas like Instagram, Facebook, it's like I'm telling you things and you the audience has to respond. But I feel like Twitter is everybody is like at the same level connecting with each other, and that's really what draws me to Twitter as a professional development standpoint. Like I can talk to Dr. Mason and she's like she's above me like professionally, but like she is like at the same playing field on Twitter, like like in an accessible way, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that you can ask anybody anything, anytime, anywhere in the world. And sometimes they'll answer. Lots of times they do answer. If you have a question from an author of a book and you want to ask them, you don't have to be afraid. You just ask it. And fortunately, lots of times they will answer. So that is really lovely that you can. I like the instantaneousness of it, that you don't have to wait forever to get some of your answers. And once you make those, you develop that personal learning network like SChat is, then if you don't get your question answered, you can go to the person. So you can say, okay, Francine, can you tell me about that? And you're more than likely to get the answer when you ask directly. Because you've made those connections with all of the people to be able to not be afraid to ask the question or ask for a resource or ask for help in something that you may need. And maybe you don't do it even directly, openly, which I do most of the time. You can, then connect with them personally and ask them those kind of things. So I love that. It is really more of a professional, it's way more professional for sure, I think, in many aspects, or that's the way I choose to use it. I certainly do and have over the years added a more personal aspect to it and shared some personal things, but really the professional aspect is why I'm drawn to Twitter. And continue to stay in the community because I feel like I'm connected to the community. Having been that I'm retiring, I'm going to have to find, I'm really retiring at some point. I will really retire. I will have to, make different connections through Twitter somehow and see if it is as valuable. But I think I'll always stay connected to the school counseling community because you just are amazing.
I think Jeff had
I
mentioned.
agree with the accessibility, like Susan is saying. We and Danielle, we didn't have these people accessible to us in this way on any other platform that I know of. Anyway, I know there's a lot of them out there I probably don't know how to use, but thinking about like the Facebook groups, if you're not part of that group, you can't interact with that group. But on Twitter, if you know that hashtag, you open yourself up to anybody else who follows that hashtag. So you can get that accessibility to people that you may not have that ability to tap into on any other platform, and do it very, very quickly so that you can get that information.
I think Jeff had mentioned earlier about mostly it being professional. And I guess that's, for me, I feel like that's, I usually think of just Twitter when I'm doing professional things. I mean, occasionally there might be something, but usually that's what it is. And like Facebook's a little bit more personal with family and that kind of thing. But it's just that connection I think is super important. And I think that, like Susan mentioned, the instantaneous piece about getting a reply at all hours from who knows where, I think is pretty interesting and maybe great. I don't know, maybe people need to sleep, but maybe I do too.
I wrote in the thread that I like that I can cut through a lot of the fluff that pops up in other things using the hashtag, particularly because it lets me filter out anything that I don't need to see, that keeps it professional, keeps it focused on what I want. It's kind of fun to scroll through just the general feed people they follow sometimes, but most of the time I'm just going straight to the hashtag because that's my main goal with using Twitter. The other thing that I like is I feel like Facebook is useful, and I use that quite a bit now too for those groups, but I think it's accessibility, but also I think I get better formed questions and answers on Twitter, which is surprising. I feel like I can use like the Let Me Google That For You website for half of the Facebook posts that I see. It's like not even a full sentence that time of day RTI. Like, I mean, it's pretty basic a lot of times, but I use both those. Those are my two main things. I don't think you'll ever see me on TikTok though. I'm not going to be the TikTok counseling geek, I don't think. Those words, I may rue those words later on, but it is on YouTube. So
we'll respond to
This
you
is
if you post it on
videoed.
TikTok, Jeff.
There's
And
so many new
recorded.
hashtags that we're gonna have, like Jeff Ream on TikTok, and then Susan's not retiring.
I'm waiting for Jeremy baking videos on TikTok. I will say one of the things that I really like about Twitter, and I don't know how this has happened, but in this 10 years that I've been on Twitter, I've somehow managed to amass over 8,000 followers. And so I see that I have privilege and responsibility in that. And so what I think I appreciate about Twitter is that I can use that to promote other things way more. I mean, you can't really do that on Facebook. You can't really, I mean, you can kind of do that on Instagram, but I don't know. I just feel like I can share things more easily. For example, I retweeted Jeff's going to make some new stickers in his Etsy shop. I can share that. I can share about the scholarship. I can share Christina Tillery and Alicia Oglesby and another person. They've got a affinity event coming up for Black school counselors. I can share those kinds of things way more easily on Twitter than I can on any other kind of platform. And my hope with that is that then, that gets out to people who might not see it otherwise. It just seems like that's an important feature of Twitter, is being able to share. And then also I feel like I can consume the information more easily too, because everything, even if you have a video, like I know Susan's been doing her walking videos, and people post other things in their tweets, the real estate that it takes up is still small compared to other platforms. So I feel like I'm almost able to consume it more easily. I don't know.
I think going back to what Danielle was saying about putting people on kind of a level playing field, or, being on the same playing field, there's a lot of just diversity of thought that I find on Twitter. And because, anyone can tweet something, and there's pros and cons of this, but, there's so many voices that are being heard, and those voices are challenge my thinking and my perspective in many ways, probably in ways different than maybe, being a part of a Facebook group. Maybe in a Facebook group, someone is posting about a specific concern that they're having, and then people are, responding to that thing specifically. But I've found that a lot of people on Twitter are just sharing ideas. And those ideas are sparking other ideas and other ideas and other conversations, and then action. And it's been pretty neat to watch some of that, those ideas and those conversations turn into action. And so I think that's probably that combination of the connection, the being able to have access to people quickly, and by who you're following and who you're retweeting, and which posts you're liking, you're able to find those like-minded people and make those connections, and those connections lead to action. And so that's probably, in my mind, what's making it a little bit different than, say, Facebook. I do see communities building on Instagram, but it's still that conversation doesn't happen the same way that it does on Twitter.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I'm active on Instagram, but I still feel like it's not the same. Like, it's not the same, because it's like people are consuming the information that I'm sharing, and I feel like the whole purpose of Twitter, and like what I like try to say as much as possible, is everybody has ideas that are worth sharing. So it's not just like, yeah, you're getting ideas from me, but like I'm hoping that you share something that you're doing too, because that's going to make us all better. We can move on to the next question, Erin, if you feel like we're ready.
Yeah, so we've really just got, and I think we're kind of working our way to the end. We've just got about 12 minutes left. This has been great. I feel like we've had really rich discussion. So grateful for all of you for staying on. So the last question is really just, do you have any advice for anyone who's unsure about how to get the most out of Twitter? Or really, I think we can just kind of talk about any tips that you personally use to get the most out of Twitter.
I think several
Danielle
people
kind of. Go ahead, Matt.
Sure. Okay. I think several people have said that they just took the plunge and just did it. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just to go and then try it and then connect with people. And I didn't get to mention this earlier, but I like something that Jeremy had mentioned about, really looking up to like Mindy and Kat. And I know that after Mindy had gotten School Counselor of the Year, we had followed each other on Twitter, and then like I just wanted to ask her a question, and so like we had I feel like it was a phone conversation, but I just wanted to ask her some questions, and she was very willing. And so even though she was School Counselor of the Year, which is a big deal, she was still gonna talk to me and answer my questions and talk me through some stuff that I was asking her about. And then again with that whole connection piece, then now whenever we see each other, we make sure that we get a picture that we put on Twitter or Facebook and our fancy pants because we're dressed up. And so I think that when you make those connections, it's so much more meaningful when you then connect in person. At ASCA this year, one morning, I was sitting at a big table talking with some people, and I was like, well, we've been talking, let's get a picture. And I was like, are you on Twitter? And they're like, yeah. So then I'm like, what's your username? So then I go, and we were already following each other. And then the people around us were like, ha, 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 that's super funny. But it was cool because then I was able to tag the person because we already were following each other when we were able to have that conversation at the table. And so I think that it really creates a very wide network that is supportive.
That was pretty much what I was going to say. Just jump in there. You know, I think Danielle and I were kind of the same way, just, you know, introverted and not really sure and kind of scared to ask a question or to get involved. Or, you know, Susan was the same way. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just going to do it. Just do it. Just ask a question. Whatever question it is, ask. There's no bad question. Just ask it and you'll find these connections with people. And, you know, same situation with Mindy. I think Jeremy was the one. I was talking to Jeremy because I felt like I knew Jeremy better. Had never met Mindy before. And I'm like, you know, I just want to meet her. I want to ask her questions. Like, I have all these questions. He's like, oh my God, I'll take you to her. Like, what are you talking about? It's Mindy. She's a normal person. And he just took me to her. And we had like this 3-hour huge conversation about all these amazing things. And I'm like, what just happened? I don't even understand how I was in the same space with this person. But if you just jump in there and say hi to these people that you meet on Twitter, when you see them in real person, you'd be amazed that they'll talk to you like, you know, they just saw you yesterday, and then they'll introduce you to all these other people, and you'll have all these connections that open all these doors and help you grow, like Connie said, and challenge you in so many ways that you otherwise will not be challenged, and you will not grow if you don't offer yourself that opportunity to just be uncomfortable for just a minute.
I have to shout out Andrea Burston, who's not here, but like I met Andrea through like blogging and Twitter and like and then we ended up presenting together, and now like we reconnected through Twitter, and because we were gonna do a elementary school counselor chat, and it's been like the best thing because it has completely like reinvigorated me as a school counselor, and like being in and out of the field from having children. And she, like, we have been meeting and just talking on like doing a video chat like once a week just to connect. But like, if I wouldn't have had that initial Twitter meetup with her, like that, I don't know, none of that probably would have happened. And so it's like the friendships that you can make with people and the professional connections is just amazing.
Sorry. And the nice thing is that I don't think that has changed. The jumping in piece, the new people that continue to join into SChat. I know people seem to be, and for lack of a better word, but I think it is scared a bit. You know, do I just jump in? Do I say anything? Do I make a comment? It's like raising your hand when you're in a university class and you used to be afraid to do that, right? And it's so silly. You know, we just need to ask and collaborate and connect, because really the fabulous thing is that we are here to help each other. We know that, you know, we've all talked about that isolation piece, and we've all experienced it if you've been a school counselor in a school where there's just you. So, you know, being able to do that and, you know, trying to encourage people to see the benefits and to understand that they're still there. It's not lost, because I think people can get discouraged and think, you know, don't get me wrong, because I've thought sometimes there are days where I've thought, what am I doing on Twitter? What am I doing on Facebook? Like, I think I just want to quit it all. Right. And then I do. I really, some days I just do. And then I think I'd lose some connections that I don't want to lose. And I'd learn things that I still need to learn. And so I hope that people are still encouraged to know that we are a community that will help you. We really will. And if we can't, someone we know can. And to just, again, jump in and do it, you'll find the benefits. You will see them for sure.
One more thing I wanted to add about that. And I mean, and I said this before, but Twitter can be super overwhelming. And if you're looking at it, it's just like, where do I even begin? Like, what is all of this? The thing that has always been helpful to me is to use like TweetDeck or like some kind of service that allows you to just look at the one specific or many specific hashtags that you want to follow, to just kind of take out all the noise. And that has been something that I feel like in the beginning, we did a lot of education about like how to tweet, how to do a chat and stuff. And it makes me think that we need to get back to kind of basics and reintroduce people how to use Twitter, or kind of like help them figure out how to participate in a chat, or explain more like what the benefits are. Because for a new person coming in, you might have no idea where to start.
Danielle, you and I were on the same page there. Picking maybe like one or two hashtags to follow at first and just get used to following one or two. One of the things I love about SC Chat is it is very positive. I know we got feedback from some people saying they wanted to take breaks from Twitter because they were worried about the negativity, but I have to say following the SC Chat hashtag tends to be very positive for me, and a place where I can go to escape from some negativity.
And kind of going off that, like, you don't have to spend a lot of time for it to be meaningful. I mean, it's been hard for me to get back in, and it's something I really love, but even if you spend like 5 minutes a day, just like just scroll through, I guarantee you'll want to spend more than 5 minutes. But if you have 5 minutes, I feel like you can benefit from just looking at, you're not even tweeting, just lurking. You can just look and lurk and learn.
I feel like just as life changes, your priorities sometimes change. And so as the person, this is my advice to myself, the person who like, I've taken a 3-year break, I feel like, from Twitter, and I've eased back in with lurking, but find what your balance is. Pay attention to what your needs are. I know for me, it was difficult to find a balance between, my personal and professional. And when Twitter, is your professional coming into your personal because it's on your phone and, it's mixed in with the other things that you follow, it was difficult to compartmentalize some of that information. So it was helpful for me to figure out a better way to do that. One of the things that I do is I have time limits on some of my apps. I have an iPhone. And so, if I've been on Reddit or Twitter or whatever for too long, then, that's my screen time alert goes off, it shuts down and I'm done for the day. And I think being able, there's the positive and the negative. So find the balance for yourself. If you need to have a boundary around your professional life, then set that boundary, and that's your boundary and you can hold to that. But be willing to step your foot back in, because like Danielle said, as someone who, with kids and things like that, and life changing, it can be intimidating to get back in, but, jump back in and see what's there for you. For me personally, I'm grateful that you all invited me back, because this was a great way for me to dip my toe back in. So thank you for that. But, know your boundaries, and what's the balance that you need to stay healthy and mentally well.
And I think going off of that too, it's, the door is always open. We're always wanting this to be a community that continues to grow and expand. And we understand that sometimes you need to take a break, but you can always come back in. And I know we're about at time, but, we all had a difficult year last year, and we're headed into another year of uncertainty. And so we may need to rely on these kinds of networks again as we go through another school year with more uncertainties, and trying to do the best that we can to support our students and our schools and our communities. And so we certainly encourage you all to continue to use SC Chat for support. And I'm so grateful, and I know I want to give Danielle a chance to say things too, but I just wanted to say how grateful I am to all of you for joining us tonight for our Twitterversary and how great it is to be able to celebrate being around for 10 years, and hopefully we're around for 10 more years. So I'll be quiet so Danielle can close us out, and then we'll be done with our live stream.
Well, I feel like I don't even know what to say. It's just, I mean, I can't even imagine, like, back then, like, that trying to figure out how to use a hashtag could be what this has become. So, like, it's amazing. And I'm so excited you all were able to come, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you all at a future conference in real life someday. That would be amazing. So thank you so much, and keep doing all the amazing things that you're doing, and keep on sharing. And for people who are watching and wondering if, like, this is something that they could possibly do, absolutely you can. Share something little, or just lurk a while, and you'll see that we're real people just like you.
Before we go, I just realized, because I'm seeing something about maybe doing future live streams, so that's definitely something we can talk about. Susan, do you want to say anything about our schedule for the year? Not necessarily topics and everything, but I know that you've got it pretty well lined up.
Yeah, well, I'd like to say thank you to all that have volunteered to co-moderate. This is a collective, a collaborative effort, and all of us are working together. There are no bosses at all. There might be those of us that are volunteering our time to do one thing or the other, and that we're all really trying to make this better. So if you have any ideas, if you want to get involved in SChat in any way, if you'd like to even collate our chats, or if you have an idea that we've never thought of, jump in, just ask or share, or ask one of us that are here, or any of the co-moderators that are there. And if any of you still want to co-moderate, please do. We want you to take that leadership role and jump in. And if there are 3 co-moderators, that's fantastic. So I would thank everyone I know that are on Twitter tonight and that are not on, but normally are. Thank you for everything that you do all year long to contribute to that community.
And I think we're still planning on the first Wednesdays of every month at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, and then adjust accordingly to your time zones. Is that right? First Wednesday still?
Yes, first Wednesday of every month. Yes, 6:30 Mountain Time where I'm at. Yeah. So yes. Yeah, and please, people from all over the world, jump in. So even if you don't join us on the Twitter night chat because you're sleeping somewhere, jump in and just post to the hashtag, because we're wanting your voice.
Yeah, it's going on all the time. All right. Thanks, everybody, so much for joining us for our anniversary. Take care and be well.
Wow.